episode 33. I'm using my laptop for this. See if it works. Not sure if it will. Anyway, if the sound quality is not good or if the picture quality is any different, do let me know, please. Right. My name is Mel Brown and welcome to episode 33 of my podcast. This is my fortnightly vlog about knitting, crochet, spinning, weaving, yarn dyeing, anything else that seems like a good idea at the time. Excuse me. I am in North Yorkshire, in the north of England, where I live with my husband, our 3 daughters and 3 cats. I'm hoping that one of them might make an appearance at some point. As somebody was telling me recently, we don't see the cats anymore. So hopefully you'll see them. Okay, you can find me on social media. On Instagram, I am Mel Brown Crafting Podcast. I also have an account for my teaching, which is Creative Escape Retreats. On Ravelry, I'm Funky40, and there's a Ravelry group for this podcast where all the show notes are and the chat and things. So if you see something or hear something today that you're interested in, just go across to the show notes. There's a link down below here. And they'll have clickable links to patterns and things so that you can go and have a look. Right, daughter appeared. We're right in the middle of GCSEs and A-levels here. So there's children all over the place. Right. So let's get started. Where are they now? What happened to the projects that you've already seen? Right, sorry about that. Daughter was making a cup of tea rather noisily. So there's going to be a few interruptions today, but that's okay. So where are they now? What happened to the projects you've already seen? Well, first of all, my old friend, a memory blanket. I'm not going to show it to you today, although I have put at least a couple of squares on it since I last spoke to you. I've had quite a few patterns on the go where I need to check the pattern, I need to follow along, I need to count or whatever. And then if I've wanted to sit in the evening, my husband and I sit and he puts some TV on and I just watch that with him. I like to, obviously, to crochet and knit while I'm watching. And these projects have not been suitable for it, so I've hooked out the blanket and I've done a couple of squares and it is lovely. It really is like an old friend. I never want to finish it really. But I'm not going to show you that. So that's my work in progress number 1 and has been for quite some time. The Quaker boomerang. So this is a pattern. Gosh, I should know this by now. Susan Ashton. Anyway, the Quaker yarn stretcher boomerang, designed for hand spun yarn, and I've made 2 already. This is my 3rd, and I've been making it with yarn that my daughter, my youngest daughter, I've got 3 daughters, the youngest has autism spectrum, and yarn that she has herself dyed and spun and blended and whatever. So pretty much all the yarn that's in this, she's had a hand in at least one of those processes. So I finished it, and my blocking queen has blocked it for me. Now it looks a little different to a normal the normal pattern, because partway through Belle decided she didn't like the reverse stockinette parts of it, so I took that out, and then the actual sort of triangular kind of boomerang shape wasn't really appropriate for her because she kind of wanted to wear it as a scarf, so I changed the shaping partway through so it doesn't look like the others. But let me just stand back and let you see it. So I'm not 100% convinced that this end, I just found this ball of singles. I think it might have been from my first batch from Spin City, having said that it was all Belle's work, but the rest of it here, this is all stuff that she's spun or dyed or both. Now the colour here is not particularly good. Let's see if I can get it a bit better. That's a bit better. So she dyed a rainbow and then just kind of went mad from there. So it's very open, it's not the softest thing, but it's long enough to wear as a scarf, and it's her own work. So I'm really proud of her for that. And now of course it's the summer, so she won't be wearing it for a while, so I'll just wear it. So that's a finished object. What else? I've just realised I don't have to keep stopping it because it's going straight onto my laptop. Duh. Okay, so the Tunisian Ripple. This is a project that I'm doing to teach at Yarn Etc. in Harrogate. It's called the Tunisian Ripple Scarf. and I am using Easy Knits yarn. So let me find you the yarn, the ball band. It's a beautiful yarn. Oh God, I can't find it. Never mind, I'll show you the project. It looks pretty much the same as it did last time because it's a scarf. It's a 1-row pattern and it's beautiful. I mean, you know, if you haven't seen it before, just take a moment to enjoy how beautiful that is. You can see these vertical loops. This is the trademark of a Tunisian crochet design, and it's long. It's getting longer all the time, obviously. Last time I said that it was starting to be a bit of a slog, and I might go to the stage where I have a quota of rows per day, and I have actually done that since I last spoke to you. So I now have a quota of 5 rows a day. I'm not doing that before I do anything else because I'm doing a lot of crafting for work, but I am actually doing 5 rows a day. Now let's look at my mark counter. I only did 4 yesterday, oops, but the day before I did something like 15, so I am actually getting through it, which is great, and this is all I've got left. So now I've got that out, I should excuse me, I should be able to find the ball band. Okay, there it is. Easy Knits, Deeply Wicked in the Hulk Smash colourway. So it's almost finished. I need to recheck the pattern actually because I'm assuming there's just a standard cast off row when the yarn is almost run out, but that won't be long now. I would think by the time I speak to you again that will be finished, and then I just need to get it blocked, and I think we've got something programmed in for October or something. I mean, it's only June now, very early June, so plenty of time to get that sorted. But yeah, it's a good project. It's very repetitive. Oh, Pippi! That's our farm cat. It's very repetitive, which is great, and it's just, you want to get into a rhythm of it. I think that's what I tend to do. If I'm going to do 5, I end up doing 10 or 15 because I get into a rhythm of it, and it's really nice. So that is work in progress number 2, and if you've watched before, you'll know that once the end is in sight, once I can smell the end of a project, I start to get a bit fixated with it, so I'll probably finish that in the next couple of days, I would think. Okay, the Geek Socks. This is a pattern that I love, and it pairs perfectly with the yarn that I've chosen for it, which was Claire Nettleship Yarns. I'll put a link into Claire's website or Facebook or whatever. Her colours are just amazing, and one thing I really love is that when she dyes up a colourway, she puts on the band whether it's small, medium or large stripes, and then she gives an indication of how many, if you were doing say a 64 stitch sock with this size needles, how many rounds you would have with each stripe. And that's really, really useful if you're doing a pattern like the Geek Socks, because the Geek Socks has, as soon as the colour changes, you do a slip stitch pattern, a 2-row slip stitch pattern, and then you 2 round, and then you go just do normal. So you need at least 3 rounds in the colour before it changes again. So it's really useful to have information like that. Obviously it's only a guide because everybody's tension is different and you might have different stitch count or different needle size, but it's really useful guide, so I find that great. This yarn's actually custom dyed for me for a retreat, so it's even longer stripes than usual, wider stripes, but anyway, it's done. So here they are, and you can see the slip stitch pattern here, so it seems to kind of wobble the line between the 2 colours. I just love it, and you can see here below what it is in plain stockinette. They're done. To say I follow as usual, I follow the Geek Socks pattern as in the stitch pattern, but the actual construction, I've done my own toe. I start with 12 on each needle and go up to 64. I've done a German short row heel, and then I've done about a couple of centimetres of twisted rib. So if you've not seen twisted rib before, that is how it looks. I think it's beautiful. I think it's the best looking rib. It's just a knit 1, purl 1, but you knit into the back loop, and it twists those stitches. Now I had carefully planned where to start casting off, in order that I finished on the same colour. So, you know, it was the whole of the top was one colour. But look, I made a mistake. I went into another, and this one is even more annoying. Look at that. How many stitches is that? That I had to go into the new colour. And I was really annoyed with myself at first until my husband pointed out that our stray cat, Luna, she has a pink nose, but she's got this tiny little ginger spot on it. It's the cutest thing. I'm always kissing it and she's like, oh God, she's doing it again. But it is absolutely delightful. And he said, oh, it's like Luna's little spot on her nose. That man knows how to motivate his wife. So of course now I love it. But that's the way it is, not quite intentional, but there we go. So only used 54 grams or something of the yarn, which is fabulous because it means I can make another pair if I do use another yarn for the heel and the toe, toe and the heel and the cuff. I'll be able to get another pair of socks out of it, which is brilliant because it would be wasted on my memory blanket. I usually, when I've got sock yarn left over, I just put it in the memory blanket bag and I use it in that. But it would be really wasted because you'd get kind of so far out in the square in one colour and then you'd go into another, and it's a waste of lovely yarn. So I shall have another pattern. And in fact, at Knit Group, Amy and I picked out a pattern. I can't remember what it is now. If I remember, I'll pop it up here. A pattern that I might well do with it. Because I was looking at Flying North and she said, oh, I did something like that, it was a bit more fancy. I looked at this pattern, I thought, yes, definitely. So that's planned for the other half of that. And I've still got 2 skeins of other colourways, one of which is the first colourway she ever created in her business. So I am just so excited about using those. Right, so that's Geek Socks, finished object. Okay, the last one that you've seen before is Less is More. This is an Amy King pattern. Designed for handspun again, and I'm not going to tell you too much about it because those of you who watched before will have seen it all before. If you want to know more about it, then just go back 1 or 2 episodes and you'll see it start to come together. So here it is, all handspun. This and this by a friend of mine, Sarah. Beautifully done, and the rest of it's handspun by me. Some parts of it dyed by me. This part was dyed by me, and so is this, and so is this. This is the bit I just started when I spoke to you last. It's the fire colourway, and I have finished. So I've just put a little garter stitch band on the bottom. It's rolling slightly in places, despite it being garter stitch, but that's fine. The blocking cream will sort that out. So the next thing then is the sleeves, and I have come to a bit of a pause with this, but it started me with something new, which is quite exciting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have that, I want to have that at the end of the sleeves. But as you can see, there's quite a difference between this and this. And if I put those next to each other, it's not going to have that fade look, is it? So what I wanted to do was to create some yarn to bridge the gap. And I was watching one of my favourite podcasters, Grace Shalom Hopkins. She does spinning and dyeing and all kinds of mad things. And she did this video where she had a spinning project on, and she had a little intro where she said what she was planning to do, and then you saw her spinning and it didn't come out as she expected, and I really enjoyed watching it, just kind of a project diary effectively, and that got me thinking about doing the same. So I've got 2 on the go. Typical me, jump straight in. The first project is making the yarn to bridge the gap for these 2. So I've started right at the beginning with it, what fibre I'm going to choose, what colours I'm going to choose, how I'm going to dye it, how I'm going to spin it, and I'm filming me dyeing it. So far I've dyed it and I have started to spin it. So you'll get the kind of what's actually made its way into the garment on this podcast, but there'll also be later on a video of the whole process from beginning to end to look through. So that's going to be really good fun. I've started a second one as well, which I'll tell you more about when I get to that segment. So that's still a work in progress, and I am thinking, I don't know, I will talk to somebody who knows more about these things, but I thought I might put an edge along there and maybe buttons, I don't know. We'll sort it out near the time. Right, okay, so that is all of the where are they nows. Let me gather together my new whips on the block. Right, first new whip on the block is the Hotel of Bees shawl by Christina Haddering. This is the buzz along, so we are doing a make along to do with bees. So there's a few of us doing the Hotel of Bees pattern, but if you want to join in and don't fancy that pattern, just use something else that's kind of spring related, vaguely. I'm not one for rules, so if you want to take part, then just take part. So down below, the link takes you over to Ravelry, and there'll be a link there to the buzz along thread. So if you want to take part, please do. So let me show you mine. I have already made one. I made one in May last year and I loved it so much. I used the recommended yarn, which is the Scapious Stone Wash, and I loved it. I really, really enjoyed it. There's another cat coming in, by the way. Can you hear that? Did you hear that beep? That's the chip reader, so that all our cats have a chip in the back of the neck, and the cat flap is meant to read their chip, and if it's one of ours, then it lets them in. If it doesn't, if it isn't, it doesn't work very well. One of the neighbours' cats gets in all the time. Ah, Clady, hello. Oh, this is my old fella. I haven't seen him in a little while. Here he is. He's such a purry, cuddly beastie. He is 15 years old. He's lovely. Let's sit on that. I've got his claw caught. I need to get his claws cut. Okay, I'll just see if he wants to go upstairs. He likes to sleep on one of my daughter's beds all day or underneath it. Good boy. Right, Hotel of Bees. So, the Scapious Stone Wash is really nice. And I only had little bits left, but we did a swap in our knit group in the winter, end of last year, and one of the people who had put into the swap a bag of Scapious Stone Wash, and I thought, okay, I'll have that then. So I did, and they're actually very similar colours. Sorry, I got some in my eye. Very similar colours to what I had chosen for my first one, but just slightly different. And there's definitely enough to do another one, although not enough of the any one colours. There's the programme. I used 2.2 skeins of one colour, 2 of another colour, and half of a third. There wasn't 2.2 skeins of any one colour, so I knew I was going to change it up a little bit, but I have no problem with that. So I got it started, and this was a weekend before last. I was obsessed with it, so I worked on it all weekend. I had intended to do other stuff, and I didn't. It was actually a bank holiday weekend as well, so I haven't run any ends in yet, so forgive that. So here it is. So we've got the bees' wings down here, the open honeycomb, then we've got the little bees. You see the little bees? And then the fillet honeycomb, and then we're back to the same again. And the colours are changing. The grey is something I haven't done before, and this kind of stripe of the honeybees inside is different. So it's different colours, and now I'm just kind of repeating the same patterns. And one thing I love about this pattern, there's a lot of things I love about it, but one thing is that you start off with 145 chain, and you're getting smaller all the time. So each time you repeat the wings or the honeycomb, whatever, the rows get shorter. And whilst I love the long row because it really gives you a chance to get into the pattern, it's lovely to feel that, you know, it's getting faster and faster as you go along. And another thing I love about it is that you get a real variety of stitches. A lot of crochet projects, you kind of get your stitch and you stick with it, whereas this, you've got the fillet, which is obviously I'm sure you'd know, when I'm not giving away the pattern details here, but that's, you know, single crochets and chains. Then you've got some treble crochets going backwards. You've got this one, which is the double, and yeah, I'm switching between US and UK terms here, which is a bit of a shame. Sorry about that. But you know, there's a variety of different stitches, and each section has its own type of stitch. So you get lots of variety, you can't get bored, and it's getting faster all the time. So it's a brilliant project. I love it, and I love the yarn too. So I would say I'm probably more than halfway, probably about halfway through now. I'm not in any hurry to finish it because I'm really enjoying doing it, but I do need to run some ends in. It's looking a bit shaggy. I do tend to run them in as I go. I don't like having a load left at the end. So that's the Hotel of Bees. What else? Oh, I started something else. That was the weekend before last obsession. Last weekend's obsession was the Fable Cow. This is by Juliet. So this is something that's visually very, very striking. It looks like knitted brioche, but it's actually Tunisian crochet. Juliet's a fairly new designer, and it's a really awesome pattern. It's been condensed to go into Interweave magazine, and she hasn't yet rewritten it to go to sell directly, because with magazines, what designers tend to do is that the magazine has the rights to the pattern for a certain number of months or years, and then the rights to it revert to the designer, and she hasn't rewritten it for individual publication yet. So that just caused me a couple of problems. I'll be honest, I couldn't quite work out, and I finished it. I started it Friday, finished it Sunday, and it's now with the blocking cream, which is why you can't see it. But I will pop in a picture here of it almost fully done. And what happens is you've got a repeat, a sort of 8-row repeat, but it's offset slightly, so you've got leaves and they offset slightly. Well, I've misunderstood that at the final row because the offset is not right. And it looks lovely, don't get me wrong, it's very pretty, but it's not right. And I have actually emailed Juliet because the reason I was doing this, I wanted to teach at Yarn Etc. teach a course on this because it's so beautiful. I don't know if she's going to be able to give me some advice on how to get that row right, but what I'm going to do is remake that instead of a super chunky, and I used a 10mm, although the pattern suggested a 9mm hook. I'm going to go with a chunky and a 6mm hook and make it into something that's the cowl itself is an over the shoulder kind of stiff, amazing piece of kit. I'll make it into more of a soft neck cowl and see how that goes. Offer a second option. So that's a finished object, but I'll show it to you when I get it back from Andrea. I'll show it to you, and you can see that, and I might have even started the second one by then. Lovely. Okay, what else? Weaving. Now, if you're new and you're not a weaver, you don't have to fast forward. I don't go into these things in much detail. I had started, I was about to do my first course on weaving when I last spoke to you, and I've done lots of sort of normal, totally round, so you keep going round and round and round weaves. I decided to do a slightly more asymmetrical one. And when I last spoke to you, I was talking about I wanted to put some crochet and some fabric and some weird and wonderful things. So I did, and I have, and it's done. So the interesting thing is, I'd done some of these things to get it ready for the course, and then the night before the course, I was watching more weaving videos and came up with 2 new techniques. This is Raya loops and knotting. So as soon as I got up in the morning, I had to try those out. So I put those onto my weave before I went to the class. And they didn't even make it into the handout because, you know, I'd already printed the handout. But I love it. I love the chaos of it, and I've got some fabric in here as well. And I did some. Did I crochet? I think that's crocheted onto the warp threads. Yeah, and I've got several threads held together in some of them, and obviously I've used fibre, and it's lovely. And then what I did was I took it off and I put it onto a hoop, and get these from Yarn Etc. And because the others I've mounted either on cardboard or felt covered cardboard, or I crocheted a back for it and had that sewn together. I would say sewn it together, but I didn't do it. Aren't I rubbish? I've got Andrea who does my blocking for me. I've got Linda who does my sewing up. Gosh, I'm a ridiculous woman. But anyway, I think I've held that for long enough. Bye, Clyde. So that's my most recent weave. So we did the first weaving class at Yarn Etc. on Saturday. Oh my god, it was a blast. It was such good fun. So really, once we got the looms warped up, it was just kind of stand back and let them at it. And they all did such different things. I'll put in a few pickies here of the different things they did. So you can see some of them have gone for the symmetrical and I don't know, well balanced, and some of them have just gone completely bonkers. And it was wonderful. It was such a wonderful experience and very relaxing for me, because teaching, I'm normally very tense and I walk round and round and I speak to everybody and how's it going, what's happening, whatever. This was just so lovely. I could just throw in some new ideas, and if we wanted to try something out, I actually put something on that loom, did something on the loom to show people what we were doing. It was brilliant. So I am going to do more of those. I've got another short session, a 2-hour introduction to weaving, painting pots in there, so I'll put the date of that up here. And I've decided to do a whole day, a learn to weave whole day, which is a 10 till 4. That's going to be October. I'll put the date up here. And that's in a hotel in Harrogate. So it'll be in the morning. You start out with just standard weaving techniques. You get your loom warped up, use some yarn, whatever. After lunch, we'll start using fibre. We'll start doing some of the more unusual techniques. Maybe put some fabric in, and just really mess about, play about, have a lovely relaxing day together. And that, I'm really looking forward to that. And then later on in October, we've got another session at yarn, etc. So lots of opportunities to do some weaving if you locally fancy it. Right, that's weaving. Oh yeah, macro weave. I better go get that, hang on. So I think I mentioned last time that I was interested in trying something called macro weave, which is a mixture of macrame and weaving. And I wanted to make something for my friend Amanda. Now, I have made something, but Amanda, I don't think I'm going to give it to you because it's a bit weird and wacky. I think it's too wacky even for you. But you might have other ideas. So this is the second project diary. So I said I'd started one for the less is more sleeves. For this, I've started it, and I don't know if this one's going to work because it's more kind of little snippets of me saying, oh, I might try that. Oh, shall I do that? I don't know if this one will work out, but I'm just going to record bits and pieces and see how it looks when it comes to the end. So the concept is you put some knots in, and then of course you've got threads hanging down, which are sort of ready-made warp. And you could then put some knots lower in and then weave as a normal weaving would, or you don't put any knots lower and you just weave straight onto it, which gives you the opportunity to move the warp threads about, have a lot more flexibility with them than you would have on a standard weave where the other end of the warp is bolted down. So let me show you what I've got so far. So square knots, a basket weave with fibre, square knots again, some sumac with 2 different kinds of macrame cotton, basket weave with fabric, square knots, more sumac with fibre, square knots, and then I've started a little row of double half hitches. So if you don't know about macrame or whatever, don't worry, this is just a weird and wonderful thing that I've made. It's got kind of a colour scheme to it, which is a bit unusual for me, to be honest, and I'll probably try and maintain that, but it is just a little bit wacky. I think the one thing that throws it off as well is this cream. You've got the blues and greens and white, and then you've got this cream in the middle, but I'm not going to take it out. So obviously these all ends need to be tied in neatly. So that's the start of it. It's going to be another of those projects that only I will love, I suspect. You've seen those before. What am I thinking about? The embroidery project, you remember that from episode 3 or 4 or whatever? And the weaving as well. This weave here. Actually, this probably has some charm, but a lot of the projects I do them because I enjoy doing them, and afterwards I enjoy looking at them because I remember the joy I had making them. And they're not intrinsically attractive probably to anybody else, but it doesn't matter, because if I don't intend to give them away, then they don't need to be attractive to anybody else. So okay, so weaving, dyeing. I haven't done much yarn or fabric dyeing. What I have done is, for the less is more, you know, I said I wanted to link that blue to the kind of pinky purple, so I dyed some blue and some pinky purple. Now if you're dyeing yarn and you want it to intersperse in the two, you need to dye them both at the same time because it's all in one skein, right? With fibre it's a lot easier. I dyed half of the fibre pinky red and half of it blue. And as my friend Amy will tell you, I always dye. Whatever I intend to dye, I always end up dyeing red and blue. So what I'm planning to do with it now, and I've already started, is to spin long stretches, well not long stretches, a chunk of blue, what is that, one chunk or two, and then a chunk of red, and then a chunk of blue, and keep on going like that. They're obviously different size chunks, but, and then if you don't spin, you may not know this, but when you're spinning, you spin one single thread, it's known as a single, and then you tend to typically ply it with another, at least one other. So I intend to ply the red with the blue and get some that are blue blue, some that are red red, and some that are red blue. If that doesn't make sense to you, then yeah, have a look at the project diary when it comes out. So that's the only dyeing I've done, and the only spinning I've done is the other half of that. I'll put in a picky of that here. So you can see that I've separated the blue and the pinky red. So that's dyeing and spinning. Okay, classes. I told you about the weaving class I did at yarn, etc. I've done another learn to crochet day as well, and that was really good. Had a lovely time. We had 4 ladies on it, one of whom is in a wheelchair, and I was excited to have that under my belt because I needed to test the venue to see if it really was any good for wheelchairs. Now, getting in and out was okay, but the bathroom wasn't good, and so I have been looking for a place with a better disabled toilet, and I've found one, but I'll tell you more about that later on in a later episode. So plans going forward is this Saturday I'm teaching mosaic crochet. Do you remember the Havana shawl? I'll put a picky in here. Such a beautiful pattern by Tina Thorodottir, and that's just so beautiful. So we've got a course on that at Yarn Etc. this Saturday. And there's only 1 or 2 places left on that, so maybe they'll go, but I've got another one in July, so that's really exciting. And then on Tuesday week, so it's now Tuesday, so it must be 2 weeks today, I've got another introduction to spinning workshop, so where you have 100 grams of merino fibre and a drop spindle, and you get to spend a couple of hours just playing with it and learning how to draft it, how to spin it, and how to ply it. Okay, so that's all the crafting. If you're done with that, then thank you for watching. Well done for getting this far, and I'll see you in a couple of weeks. Just a little bit of personal stuff. As I said, the GCSEs for my middle daughter and A-levels for my eldest daughter are in full flow. In fact, I think my my middle daughter will be going into a GCSE in a few minutes. So they're on study leave, so when they're not actually in an exam, they're not going into school. So I'm ferrying them back and forth because we're 20 to 30 minutes away from the schools. So I am doing a lot of driving back and forth, and my youngest daughter is autism spectrum condition, so she struggles with getting to school. She's upstairs at the moment. She hasn't made it into school yet. I'm hoping that we'll get her out of bed and she'll make it in for period 3, but I don't know. So lots and lots going on here. Life is very chaotic. Still coming to terms with my own autism and a lot of stuff associated with that. So the other thing is fasting. I used to do 5-2, which is intermittent fasting, so doing a fast 2 days a week for general good health, and also sort of a little bit of weight loss a few years ago. And it was really, really beneficial for me. And recently, I've been so lethargic, totally exhausted, since I gave up drinking in August, nearly 2 years ago. I've just been exhausted all the time, and part of it is definitely autism, overwhelm. Alcohol is a very good means of coping for autistic people because it just kind of turns off all of the busy mind and makes the communication things easier, and it just makes life a lot easier. And I've been self-medicating with alcohol, not really realizing what I was doing all my life, really. And having stopped doing that it's harder to deal with the overwhelm with people and sensory stuff. So I've actually been exhausted, and a part of it is that. Part of why I'm exhausted every day is that, but I'm sure there's more to it, and I've had blood tests, I've had all kinds of things. And I decided to go back to fasting because one of the things that fasting does is puts you into a status of autophagy. It's pronounced different ways by different people, but it's kind of a clear up process where body kind of reabsorbs broken down cells and renews them, reabsorbs them or eats them. Autophagy actually means self-eating, kind of reabsorbs them during the period of fasting, and then when eating recommences, they can make new cells. So it's very good for renewal. There's a lot of research on this. Have a look at it if you're interested. And all of the stuff that we were always taught about, you know, fasting will put you into starvation mode. Research does not support that. Eating very low calories does, but not eating at all for periods doesn't do that. Anyway, I'm not talking about, you know, week-long fast. I'm talking about 16 hours. So I started yesterday. I had another fast, and oh my goodness, I had more energy than I have had in months. When I went on to HRT and started taking estrogen, I had more energy for a couple of months, and it went away again. And the specialist I spoke to said that is actually something she hears quite often. But apart from that, I haven't felt this energetic for ages. So my first impressions are that this is actually going to be really, really good for me. So yeah, that's starting. I was gonna, yeah, I haven't eaten yet today, and my body hasn't really asked me to eat, so I'm not bothered. But the plan is to fast for 16 hours a day. So I only eat between midday and 8 p.m. And that chimes with my balance anyway, the way my body works, because if I eat in the evening, I feel quite bloated and nauseous when I go to bed. So making sure I don't eat after 8 is good. And I'm not really bothered about breakfast. Often I'm not particularly hungry. So it's not a big deal. And if you're thinking, oh, breakfast is the most important meal of the day, have a look into it. Research doesn't actually support that. And all the whole, a lot of the diet advice we've been given about low fat and eating lots of carbs, research really doesn't support it. So it's interesting. Anyway, so that's me. I will see you in a couple of weeks. I hope you have a great 2 weeks. Thank you for watching. I really do appreciate it, whether you're new or one of my beloved, what's the word? I used to use the word long-suffering viewers, but one of my friends said I shouldn't use that anymore. But you guys, you know, you faithful followers, that's what she said. You faithful people who watch all the time. Thank you. I really do appreciate it. And if you're interested in anything I've said, have a look at the show notes and see the links. If you want to engage with me, I'd love that. I always reply to comments, whether they're here or on Instagram or on Ravelry. Just let me know what you think. Okay, so have fun, happy crafting, and I'll see you in a couple of weeks. Bye.